Okay, this video is about the Fieldpiece sman4 digital wireless manifold gauge and what I like about it and what I don't like about it. We'll start off with what I like about it. For the most part, large display, and turn it on. You know, as you can see, for the most part, everything is pretty visible when you look at the screen. You know, very nice screen. That backlight is very helpful, especially at night when you're in an area that's pretty much pitch black, or you know, inside where it's pitch black. I like the fact that the way the display is laid out. You know, Fieldpiece did a very good job of good thought through process and stuff like that. So you start off with your temperatures on the top, and then below that, depending on what you're trying to do, you got your superheat and subcooling. And below that, to the bottom left, right here, you got your target superheat if you're calculating. And I'm sorry, to your left, superheat. And then to the right, you know, you got your types of refrigerant and stuff like that. So scrolling through the refrigerant list is pretty easy. Of course, naturally, we only deal with R410 and R22 right now. And then also, too, with the screen here, this is pretty much the home screen. We got your superheat and subcooling. And then next screen after that, it shows you your line temps, which you're actually measuring with these two clamps. And dialing in as far as, you know, setting the temp probes on the clamps are pretty easy. Once you plug them in, you have this potentiometer right here. You know, according to the instructions, you drop in a cup of ice water and, you know, set it for 32 degrees. Pretty much I just set it in any temperature, so I set the clamps in any water temperature, and I just use a couple of thermometer probes, kind of get an average where my temperature should be, and that's where I set the clamps as far as temperature. The next screen here shows you your saturation temperatures and pressures, just as if you were looking at analog gauges. You know, you see the pressure that you're measuring and the corresponding temperature. And then the very last screen, which is your superheat calculation screen. So to the left here, you got your indoor wet bulb, which you can either pull the temp probe out. You have to pull the temp probe out and then enter your data in manually. And then, or if you have a wireless device that has the cyclometer head on it, you know, you can just, you know, get your indoor wet bulb temperature connected to a remote and send it or sync it here with the sman4 and get your indoor wet bulb, you know, that way. And once you get everything calculated, you know, it gives you your target superheat. So you can always go back to your original screen here and see what your target superheat should be versus what you're actually measuring. You know, the display is very nice, very big. It's not hard to read or anything like that. The next thing I like about this manifold are the 4 ports. Okay, naturally you have your high side, low side, and then of course your refrigerant, and then your vacuum, understandably, and you have a sight glass just to make sure that, you know, all your refrigerant is going, you know, wherever it needs to go. The only gripe I'm not too fond of are the knobs, because I guess I got big hands. They seem kind of small, you know, which is fine because it kind of helps lower your chances of over tightening, you know, when you're closing the valves off. Or if you got put too much, you know, force into opening, you know, a valve when you need to really open it right away. The construction is pretty durable. The manifold itself is pretty solid. I haven't had the pleasure of dropping this yet, so I don't intend to. But for the most part, you know, hanging in my work truck, or I should say my old work truck. I used to hang it, and then, you know, it would bounce around, stuff like that. So it didn't damage, didn't break, or anything like that. This is my second sman4. The first one I sent it back because it was still under warranty because the backlight, for whatever reason, went out. So I decided to buy another sman4 because I kind of got spoiled with it, and sent the original back. So I got to wait for that one to come back, and I'll be good to go with 2 sman4s. And again, like I said earlier, this is a wireless manifold. So if you have a device like, let me zoom out here. So you have a wireless device like your HVAC guide. It's a nice, neat thing to have if let's say you're doing an install and you're pulling down a vacuum, or if you want to verify after you did your install, after you've done your brazing, everything like that, you pressurize the system with nitrogen, and you're going to let it sit for a little bit so you can go around the house, on site, or what have you, with the HVAC guide and see what the pressures are on the manifold from outside. So what I'm going to do right now is turn this on, and then I'll let you see. Let's see which one I want. I'll do data logger. I'll do it that way. Here, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Give me a second. Give me a second. What would you check me? Alright, so now I don't know if you can see that well enough. Hold on, let me turn this light off. Might help out a little bit. I don't know if you can see now. Right here you see suction line pressure. Okay, I don't know if you can see that pretty good. Okay, there we go. You see suction line pressure. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the sync button right here on the HVAC guide, and then I'm going to hit the sync button on the sman4, and then you see the temperatures are pretty much be the same. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, let me zoom in here. You can see it. There we go. All right, so suction line pressure is 158. Let me turn this light down a little bit. Suction line pressure is 158. Liquid line pressure is 158.7. Okay. Now, when he says NSG is not receiving the signal or not receiving measurements, okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back here up here to suction line pressure 158, and as you can see on the screen, it's 158. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bleed off. I'm going to bleed off some of the nitrogen I put in these holes. I put nitrogen in there to build some pressure, so you kind of see. Some pressure, and then see how the change in pressure corresponds when you have the wireless feature going on. So I'm going to take some pressure out real quick. All right, that's a lot of pressure. All right, now down 24.3 suction line pressure, and down 25.1, and then I'm going to put the HVAC guide in here and see if we can get it to focus, and zoom out a little bit. All right, suction line pressure 24.7, liquid line pressure 25.3, and that's exactly what you have. Okay, and for the most part, readings are instantaneous. So this is a very cool thing to have. It's also a cool thing to have when you have the HVAC guide with the sman4. Let's say if you think you have a TXV issue inside the house. Well, once you sync your HVAC guide with the sman4, you can go inside and make changes to your TXV, or you can unwrap it, see the temperature changes, put your hand on it, see the temperature changes, see the pressures change from your HVAC guide. Now, of course, there are other ways you can find out whether or not the temperature changed naturally. You measure the actual line temperature coming out of the evaporator. Excuse me. But to have this to kind of verify, it's a cool tool to have. You can't beat the wireless feature is great. And also too, if you want to do, hold on a second, if you want to use the dual temperature guide to also get your wet bulb temperature, because you're going to have the wet bulb temperature head, so you can have this sitting inside at the furnace, send a signal out to the sman4, or once you get your wet bulb temperature, you can go outside, get your dry bulb temperature with a dry bulb probe, also sync it with your sman4, and your target superheat is calculated. Subcooling is not that much to it. Of course, you go off the manufacturer's plate, and of course you make sure that you have a TXV at the evaporator coil. That will help save a lot of problems in the end. The temp pros are pretty good, pretty decent. They pretty much clamp on most refrigerant lines. I haven't had any issues with these, but just be very careful because even though the manifold is pretty, sturdy and solid, these clamps aren't. And I have broken a couple, and plus they're freaking expensive, which I don't understand why. But nonetheless, clamp pros are pretty good, and the length of the cable is pretty decent. So you can, if you have like a big or tall or wide outdoor condenser unit, or even outdoor package unit, and you can't find a place to hang the manifold, at least they give you enough cord to get to the line set where you need it. And it also comes with a sturdy hook. This hook is very sturdy. I mean, this thing is rock solid. I mean, it doesn't sway or anything like that. You can stick it inside the protected grid, as far as the fan. You can stick it on the side of the condenser, anywhere, and that thing will hold, and it is pretty steady. The other thing I like about this unit, which I can't in this case, the vacuum port. Now, I haven't really used the vacuum port that much on my other S-Man unit when it came to recovery. For the most part, because I didn't have 3/8 inch hose at the time, or for most of the time, and for the most part, my line set hoses did a pretty good job. But then, after being in the field for a little while, kind of get a better understanding of pulling vacuums, doing recovery and stuff like that. Having a 3/8 inch hose is a great way to go. And as long as you can remove your core, straighter cores, out of the unit with your core removal tool, and then have unrestricted opening for your line, for your hoses, and especially with these 1/4 inch together coming out just 3/8, recovery time and also vacuum time is cut significantly. The other thing I like about this is the built-in Micron gauge. It does work. It works for the most part pretty good. I really haven't had anything to compare it with initially, because when I first started in this trade, or started doing service calls, move these out the way, I had this blue vac here. And initially, I had so many problems with this blue vac, not so much the gauge itself, but I was also using my Appion hoses, or I started using my Appion hoses, and I really couldn't get this gauge to work. So there were times when I couldn't get it to work. I had to pretty much take the Appion hoses off and go back to using my regular refrigerant hoses and using the built-in Micron gauge. So and it works. Of course, it took a little while, a long while, but the Micron gauge, does work very well. It does respond quickly and fast, and like I say, it really helped out in the pinch, and especially on cold days when you're trying to either change out a part on a heat pump, or you're trying to change out a heat pump in the cold. Trying to mess with those Appion hoses sometimes is a little struggle, but eventually I managed to get that part down, so I'm not worried about that anymore. But the Micron gauge does work, and it does work very well. Now, later on in the year, I got the Fieldpiece vacuum gauge, and for the most part, I was using it as well. And there are times when I had used both the Fieldpiece Micron gauge and the Micron gauge built inside the manifold, and the numbers were pretty close to each other. I mean, with the Micron gauge kind of read 100 microns less than what the manifold read, but for the most part, the numbers were still pretty close. And so that's all I can think of. Now, what I don't like about it, okay, other than the knobs, excuse me for a second. The only other thing I don't like about this manifold, for the money and the price that you pay for this thing, is this thing right here, the operator's manual. This, in a nutshell, is the operator's manual. Pretty much two sides, and the bulk of that, a good portion of the sides is this warranty and preface information. Basically, with this manual, it just for lack of a better word, tells you how to turn it on, turn it off, and how to use the buttons. That's it. It doesn't go into any specific details as to what you can really do or explore the full potential of this manifold. And like I said, again, that's my biggest gripe, with Fieldpiece is the fact that their instruction manuals and all the devices are so vague. Okay, like I say, it tells you what each one of the buttons do, but like I said, it doesn't go into specific details. And the analogy I can use is, you go to the Mercedes-Benz dealership, you pay your money, buy a new car, and they tell you, okay, here's the key, stick it in here, turn it on, and then when you're done, turn it off. That's it. They don't tell you about the steering, the track, the ability, all the bells and whistles that car can do. So that's how I kind of equate that. It's the fact that the manual doesn't really go into any detail as to the specific bells and whistles this thing can do. And a lot of the stuff you kind of have to figure out on your own, or uses for this you have to kind of figure out on your own. And to me, that's the only unfair advantage of that. So this is my take on this. If you got any questions, feel free to email me back. I'll be happy and glad to answer. And that's it. Thank you. There is one more thing I forgot to mention. The only other thing I don't like about this manifold, which is really not against the manifold itself, but more so with Fieldpiece, is the fact that it doesn't have a wireless printer. Okay, companies like Testo and a few others, they do have printers as well that use the infrared technology, line of sight. But to me, this is the only other thing that could really make this manifold excel, and that is having a wireless printer. A wireless printer would be great because you could print out your results right then and there. You can send your information to your HVAC guide, and then take it to your laptop or take it home wherever and print stuff out. But to be able to do it right then and there on the spot, that would be a very nice feature to have. And then to have a wireless printer means you don't necessarily have to be line of sight, which means you don't have to perfectly line it up or get it in the ballpark in order for it to print. That's my only other gripe, with Fieldpiece, if you can call it a gripe, stuff like that. So that's it for the sman4, and hopefully this will help out some of you. What else can I think of real quick? Oh, the alarm I haven't really used yet as far as the Micron gauge, because for the most part, I was using by the manifold itself, while pulling the vacuum, so it really didn't make any sense for me to set the alarm and stuff like that. Now there was a time where I did sync the Micron gauge with my HVAC guide and went inside the house to finish up the rest of the install inside the house. And I was at least, let's say, 100 feet away, between the 3 floors, and where I was in the attic and the unit was outside. And like I said, while I was finishing up, tidying up, doing the last bit that I need to do at the air handler, and stuff like that, I was able to glance at my HVAC guide and see what the microns were from the manifold. So that's, again, it's like little things like that. You kind of have to, think of yourself how you can use these devices. Because like I said earlier, the Fieldpiece, instruction booklet doesn't really get into any details as far as any special bells or whistles. So again, hopefully this, will answer some of the questions that you may have in case you were considering on buying this manifold or even the Testo manifold. I too, it was at that crossroads one time where I was torn between buying Testo and buying Fieldpiece, and I decided to go with the Fieldpiece, and I haven't regretted it ever since. Each person has their own preference as far as gauges. Now they got the manifold by Imperial coming, that's out right now, and there's so much talk, opinions, and the like about that. But to each his own. Whatever works for you as a technician, that's what you go for. And then even like for the guys that don't have a digital gauge, if the analog gauges work for you, then then so be it. So that's it. So thank you very much. I knew there was something else I forgot. I'm sorry. There was one more thing I forgot. I know I should have written all this stuff down, but let me zoom in and kind of give you and show you something here. In case you're wondering about calibration, as far as how to calibrate your manifold, it is very easy. And Fieldpiece gives you 2 ways of doing that. The easiest way to do it, and I'm going to zoom in here in 1 second. It's right here where it says atmospheric pressure. Okay, so in essence, all you would pretty much do is take all your hoses off. Okay, expose the ports to atmospheric pressure. Push the button, and then the unit will automatically zero out the unit. So, in case, let me see if I can demonstrate it. So I'm going to take all this air out. Okay, perfect. Okay, now see here on the left I got 0.7, which actually should be reading 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew all of these. I'm going to screw the hoses here. Alright, now all my ports are exposed, so all I have to do is hit the calibration button, and as you can see, went back to 0. That's how you calibrate. And to me, that's the easiest way to calibrate your unit. The other way is you calibrate by test pressure, and if I'm not mistaken, you would take a temp probe without the clamp, and then tape it to the side outside of a cylinder, measure the temperature of the cylinder, and then you would set the corresponding pressure to that. So that's the other way, to do that. I believe that is the way to do that. It's been a while since I've read that part of the instructions on it, and that is now officially it. Like I said, I wish I had written all this stuff down earlier, and all the points I like, and about some of these items and stuff like that, and the like. So again, hopefully this will answer all your questions, and if you have any questions, feel free to write me back, and I'll be glad and happy to answer. So have a good afternoon.